and welcome everybody to the State of the Onion, Series 3, Episode 8. And I'm joined as always by a distinguished panel of consciousness. There we go. I've got Nick Suter from In Time. Send me your link, Nick, and I'll put it in the chat below.
Could we start again? I was asleep.
Okay, yep, that's good.
I wasn't.
We're all old people here, by the way, so we're not going to worry about people being asleep. So you just carry on, Nick.
Oh,
Don't
perfect.
you
Thank
worry
you.
about it.
All right, great. Like
I'm also joined by Fabio. Thank you. What are you drinking today, Fabio? You philosopher?
It's an Italian beer. It's called False Flat, and it's Berliner Weiss.
That sounds great. I have no idea what that means, but it sounds great. Falling flat, did you say?
No, the name is False Flat.
Falls flat.
And it's a Weiss beer. It's German. You don't know nothing about German, so
right.
yeah, it's
an
German.
Italian beer that's German. Okay.
Look, I know about Germans, right? I know who Helmut Marko is.
Which is Austrian, I think, but carry on.
Hey, are they all the best Germans are Austrians, I've heard?
I think we're going for the World War II, right on. I mean, not with this weird going on.
Yeah.
We only need, you only need the language. Berlin Weiss gave it away.
Yeah. Well, he should have said Weiss instead of pronouncing the Weiss.
That's what I heard.
Oh, did you? I didn't hear that. Anyway, I'm not going to worry about it right now because we got a show to do, Fabio.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Also, I welcome Speed of Sound. Mike Answers an Atheism. His link is already in the chat below. Please go and sub to his channel. He's fantastic. Of course, Ella Minnow P. Thank you very much for coming on. Good to see you, as always. Okay, thank you. Welcome to Scott as well. Scott is a fantastic addition to any panel. And of course we do.
Oh, no, you're making me blush.
Fortunately, we can't see you.
That's right.
And it's probably a good thing too. I think you should put that away. But also Headless Chicken, of course. Give us a sniff, Headless. I know that's what you want to do. Thank you very much. And also Captive Dave. It's that desktop idiot, Dave from Captive Desk.
Hello, everybody. I am that desktop idiot.
I think I got it right today. But anyway, there we go. And we do a show on Saturday night together, of course, with Mike and Scott, called Saturday Night of the Atheists. Although this week you'll be going to the Ark encounter.
Yeah, I am going to I'm heading off to the protest. We got everything ready. The car's oil change, check the tires, check the spare. I'm all ready to go. All I got to do is pack our bags. And yeah, Saturday morning we're headed down. We should be there around check-in time for the hotel at 3 p.m. So around then I will be within a few minutes or so down the road of the Ark. And then the protest is on Sunday for a couple hours, and there's before and after events, and there's a lot of great people involved and a lot of great people contributing, and too many to mention, but yeah, you can get all that information from the Kentucky Atheist.
Fantastic. Yeah, head over to his channel. He's fantastic as well. Okay, I'm going to do a little intro because we do have a very serious topic, of course, as always, on the State of the Onion. And this one is actually, it's not there, but it is actually, if you look in the stream, did the first glimmer of consciousness emerge as a kind of scented awareness? And so that's the name of the topic. And basically, you see, in mythology and in narrative, especially in the deep narratives that form a substrate of culture, smell often represents discernment, danger, desire. Think of it, the scent of a predator, the perfume of a lover, the rot of corruption. These aren't just sensory experiences, they're archetypal. They're signals, ancient biological codes that shape the stories we tell and the myths we live.
So that's where you were going with the name of the title. Okay. I mean, I thought I just thought you put some idiot thing there, but actually, yeah, cool. Yeah. No, it's. I mean, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't write that. Of course, I paid $100 for someone to
Oh
write
yeah,
that.
of course. Right.
Yeah. So there you go. But
Surely pheromones and hormones and all that play a key role in biological drive for reproduction and everything.
yes, indeed. Yeah, that's a good point. This is, I think, like, what do we say? Smells are probably the most ancient way within evolution that individuals, and I'm using that very loosely, discerned themselves from their environment. So it's
Yeah,
probably
just
the
go out in
first.
the woods and walk around in a forest, and things get stinky and things change odor all of a sudden, and you become aware of it. And of course, if you live in it 24/7 with very few, with very few escapes, like in structured homes, you can see where heightened awareness can come up. You can be more sensitive to things around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd
And I think
also
this goes back through evolution to the first creatures that developed the first kind of sensory system, which
can
is.
I point out that a lot of animals communicate using scent?
What do people think of that?
I think that we need to, in some ways, narrow down what we mean by scent. If we're talking about trigeminal senses or olfactory senses. I mean, I think everybody is mostly talking about olfactory senses, but if we're going to get into that, like that's also talking about like the function of the trigeminal nerve.
I think that so we're going to make a distinction between the pure smell and the reaction, which might be like, for example, I mean, I smell fire and I run. Animals do that, and it's something ingrained in them. It doesn't necessarily brings to consciousness, in my opinion. I think that there is a kind of a deeper layer, the kind of smells which triggers something which is not directly associated with the smell. Like, for example, I smell a flower and I remember a situation where that flower was involved and maybe a person then there. And then, I remembered, what I felt that time and all that stuff. I mean, there is kind of a tipping scale there between, the immediate smell, like even pheromones, yeah, I want to fuck that, whatever it is, right? And that kind of, deeper layer that the smell can trigger.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will say, like, I think so the type of reactions that we have, like the physical reactions that we have, like when like your eyes water when you cut onions, or like when you smell smoke and your throat like starts to close up and stuff, like are those are scent responses, but like it's the trigeminal nerve that is responsible for those, not the olfactory nerve.
Responsible for what? For what again? I missed something.
For like the type of like physical responses that you have to like certain scents. It's like nose, throat, eyes, like when your eyes start burning when you cut onions.
Okay.
Or
okay.
That type of thing.
And taste too, I think, would be trigeminal, right?
Taste, I think, is more associated with the olfactory, but I don't know. I'm not an expert.
Well, some of it, but they're like saltiness, bitterness, a couple other things basically are on the tongue, not olfactory, so they kind of blend. But
well, like there's certain scents that, like vanilla, for instance, has like it doesn't have a trigeminal response in humans, but it does have a very strong olfactory response.
Okay, but salt would.
It says not taste on
Yeah.
this.
an overpowering smell, though, you can almost taste. You know what I mean? You get that something in your mouth when you smell something. A real pungent. It seems you can almost taste it. I wonder if it's tricking your senses, but it does seem to come through. Like, oh man, that stinks so bad I can taste it. A lot. You've heard a lot of people say that, right? It kind of comes through when you breathe it, I guess.
Well,
and then there's orientation too. When you smell or taste something, you move like an animal would move its ears to hear something. It will move its head a little bit to basically change the landscape of smell. I guess dogs have an almost visual sense of moving their heads and whatever to paint a picture of the landscape based on smell. So.
Oh yeah, I mean they can definitely follow like a track, as if you were actually walking, seeing the footsteps on the ground. That is it is true. It's actually really unbelievable.
So the interesting thing is that humans can do that too. It's just that like our sense of smell for us isn't like our primary like navigation sense like it is for dogs. We like the navigation part of our brain typically connects to our eyes most directly in most humans. It's not obviously the case for like blind humans, but for dogs, it is their nose. They navigate with their nose. But actually, if you look at like what sense like dogs are able to pick up versus like what sense humans are able to pick up, they're not always necessarily the same sense, but humans actually have as strong a sense of smell as dogs do. It's a common misconception that dogs can smell better than we can. They in some ways can smell directionally better than we can. Having two nostrils still helps with that a lot, but having like basically the way that their nose is constructed actually further helps them to be able to like navigate and like tell directional sense much better than we can.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello,
yeah, I think dogs have a lot more nerve
I'm
endings.
fighting with this one on my desk right now, so
they have a lot more nerve
she wants to be naughty, as you can see.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're more sensible, but I'm not.
Have more
I mean,
nerve endings. Yeah.
Yeah, but
they can have more resolution to smell than we do.
Dude.
But again, I think I'm specifically talking really about smell itself. So, Mike, can you just tell us like how our smell gland? I don't know. I'm using loose language deliberately. Is attached to the brain, for instance. Let's get down that little road for a little while.
I don't know the specifics, but it goes directly into the cortex, basically the olfactory bulb. It's a little chunk on the front of your brain, on the front on the bottom front, basically. And so it goes directly into cortex, and no other senses do. All your other senses get gated through the thalamus, which is something that can shut off when you sleep. But smell always goes directly into your cortex, so it's more primitive, and it hooks up to your amygdala, which is really associated with fear and other emotions, and your entire emotional system. And that's probably one of the reasons why smell will trigger memories, because it puts you in a mood of some sort directly. It goes directly in. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was asking for.
Okay.
I remember we mentioned this briefly the other week because we talked about how smells like bread and bacon and coffee can wake you up in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what gave me the kind of, something you said actually, Brian, was the exact trigger, but that's what gave me the idea for the title. Fabio, just a quick question to you. How does your dog smell?
What do you mean?
I'm saying, how does your dog smell?
They actually smell
like a dog.
No. They actually smell nice. The German Shepherd smells like a little bit like aged leather, and the female, she's a mixed breed. she has not so noticeable smell, but they smell good because they always outside. They don't live in the house, so they are always rolling in grass and all that stuff. So yeah, they smell really good.
Okay, thank you for that. I was
Smell
hoping to
worse
get
when
something a
they're
little
wet.
more punchliney, but that's fine.
So
Yeah.
what you were looking for? What?
A bit more of a punchline, but that's fine. Like
Hmm.
something. What's the old one?
Well,
My dog smells awful. He's got no nose.
They smell worse when they're wet.
Yeah. Wet,
I don't know
wet
why.
dog is
There you
its
go.
own smell.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Simon.
don't
Simon,
smell.
ask me the question about how the dog.
I can ask him if you want.
Excellent. Here we go. Headless. How does your dog smell?
Great. I just gave him a bath yesterday.
Thank you very much, Headless. We can always rely on you to out funny the dad joke. Okay. Anybody else like to just jump in at this point? So we've got this link between the smell gland. What did you call it? Olfactory bulb.
I believe it is called
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
olfactory bulb. I also think it's interesting that olfactory neurons are the most regenerative neurons in the adult human brain. Like, for the most part, we're not made to regenerate neurons in our brain, but olfactory neurons are fairly regenerative.
I've completely lost my sense of smell. I did about 8 years ago. It went like within 2 weeks. It just disappeared. Yeah, which is really, it's like being blind. I really miss it. I mean, I long for smelling roses. I can remember what things smell like, but I can't smell them anymore.
Wow. I had the
I
kind
wish
of
I w-
opposite. I had an opposite
Really?
experience. Yeah, well, when I
Oh.
about 10 years ago, I gave up smoking, and about a year after I gave up smoking, I suddenly started smelling again. Weird,
Yeah.
I could smell like
It's-
things halfway across the room and stuff. Whereas when I was smoking, all I could smell, of course, was my clothes.
Yeah, I'm sure you were smelling even while you were smoking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like quite literally.
Yeah.
But like I couldn't. Like now, I smell food before I eat it and stuff. I wasn't when I was smoking. I just eat it and taste it and go, all right, that's a bit bland, isn't it? Now I can really taste food. Now I'm not smoking, and I can really smell things. I go outside, and the first thing I smell is my flowers in the front garden. It's lovely. Oh, it's lovely.
I miss that.
I think it's interesting that it seems like for people who lose their sense of smell, if they don't regain it within like a year and a half, that it's like gone forever. Like, it's like you have kind of like a year and a half window to like.
Window, yeah.
Well, Mike, I had a question. Talking about like a smell of coffee, does it actually wake you up? I mean, you said it's wired right to your brain, right? So,
Yeah.
does it physically wake you up? And then my other question would be, I know the ears are somehow hooked up, so that you can hear an alarm clock or something like that. So, what's the difference on how the ears can tell your brain, something when you're asleep versus the direct wiring of the smell?
So the thalamus basically goes into like an oscillation mode, or goes into a noisy mode where it cuts out all your senses unless there's an extremely loud noise or something touches you real hard. Basically, if it goes beyond a certain threshold, your thalamus will all of a sudden reverse and wake you up.
Okay, that's so if you're shaking somebody a little bit and they don't wake up, and then you shake them a little harder and then they wake up.
Or like punch them in the nose and they'll wake up. So
okay.
Well, it's like if you want them to wake up, what you do is you just put your armpit right up to their nose, and it's the fastest.
That's one way. I usually just fart in their face. That kind of works.
Well, yeah.
Or put on a pot of coffee.
Explains it.
Fry
so
up
my smell problem.
Stop it.
Yeah. My smell problem is.
Go ahead.
My smell problem is in the receptors, so I don't get anything. So coffee wouldn't wake me up. Nothing would. Smoke wouldn't wake me up.
Yeah, but I think
neither would bacon.
As like sort of even as a cognitive behavioral, like when you actually smell the coffee, does it trigger your response system to actually start activating it? Your body starts waking up faster, and my understanding is that yes, it does. It's a a trigger that lets your body know, oh, it really is wake up time now. It's not just my brain saying that. I'm getting other triggers from my environment, and so just the act of smelling coffee causes your brain to start activating and moving.
I would
faster.
imagine part of that is the implication of imminent caffeine.
Imminent caffeine is good.
So that would
drug
excite your brain and sort of encourage it to wake up. Is
You know
the
what else? You know what else?
onboarding of caffeine.
Not just the smell of coffee, but the smell of other things as well.
Well, bacon seems to be universal, even amongst
Bacon. Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yes.
Bacon, absolutely.
Yeah, bacon will even get a vegetarian to wake up.
Oh yes.
Especially a vegetarian.
I think Mike's the only person that wouldn't work with.
I don't know. I'm pretty sensitive to bacon. I can feel it,
Well,
in
there
the air.
we go. Bacon is even more limbically registered.
I think so.
We're talking about scents, but don't you just love the sound of bacon frying?
Oh yes.
The smell of bacon, the sound of bacon.
Sounds.
I think I need to be alone for a while.
To be fair, for me, it's most meats. I'm very much like Yahweh in that respect.
Yeah, most meats burn nice.
Pleasing aroma.
I mean, if you've ever heard the sound of like an 1.5-inch thick sirloin steak on a charcoal grill,
Don't get me started on brisket.
Ooh, well, see, that should be smoking. You can't be lifting the lid. You got to keep all that sealed up for at least 12 hours, preferably 16.
Well, yeah.
24 if you really know what you're fucking
But
doing.
when it comes out, it's got a certain aroma to it.
Oh yes. Oh, absolutely. Hoo. A well smoked brisket, bud. That'd make a vegan go, oh.
Well, and if it's burnt ends, I assume it's no longer considered meat anyway. So, like even a vegan, it's burnt ends. It's charcoal you're eating. It's delicious.
Yeah.
Charred fat, I tell you.
Now, the interesting part of this question that intrigues me and that's got my mind juices flowing is kind of the first half and the middle bit, and how that, because we've been talking about scented awareness basically, by my understanding, but it's the consciousness emerging as a kind of, and it's the as a kind of that intrigues me, because I'm not quite sure how that translates into this discussion. But the consciousness emerging part, now that really does get me going, because I'm a long-standing proponent of the stoned ape theory. Have been since 1980 something, when I first
which theory?
Stoned ape.
The stoned ape theory, it's called.
Oh no.
Yeah, do you want to just explain that for us, Brian?
Basically what it is, it's some of our some of the unique qualities of our consciousness and awareness spring from the fact that we consumed vast amounts of hallucinogens in one form or another. And it was that shift in the brain chemically that gave meaning, in scare quotes, and philosophical depth to auditory and other sensory input. Sort of like the glue that stitched it all together to a wow, that's interesting. Wow, it's even useful. I shall keep this as a function of how I'm interacting with the world, how I'm processing these inputs. That's kind of the best way I can explain it without getting technical, and my brain.
Well, if that's the case, I should become really, really conscious with my habits lately.
Well, anyone who has taken hallucinogens knows that there is a shift in how you perceive things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Yep.
know if I would agree with that. I mean, I've done hallucinogens.
You've gone quiet.
Well, different hallucinogens will affect you in different ways. Psilocybin will be completely different
I've done
from,
a lot of
say,
that.
peyote.
Haven't
Yeah,
ever
that's
done
good.
that. Don't plan on doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, I've never
I have
taken
done
peyote.
psilocybin, I've
but-
done LSD, I've done MDMA, I've done cannabis.
A shift.
I
A
don't.
shift.
I wouldn't describe any of my experiences as like something spiritual, interesting, colorful, vivid.
Yeah.
But
Vivid.
Yeah, vivid is a good word.
I've never been like spiritually moved.
No. Not we're not
drugs.
talking about spiritual movement. We're
No,
talking
no.
literally stitching together consciousness from the input senses. Yeah, because our consciousness is very intricately linked to our sensing of the world around us. I mean, that's the whole
Yeah.
point of
Probably
being consciously
primarily
aware,
built by
being
our ability to
aware of
sense.
yourself in the moment and that movement moving forward, for example, and the history of you in different moments. Yeah.
So Fernando Pessoa, the guy that you quoted and put in the thumbnail, his theory was that there's this raw sensory input that you should trust more than your thinking mind. You know, that thinking kind of shuts it off or whatever. And he did a whole bunch of stuff on it. Anyway, psychedelics very much bypass a lot of the interpretation that you do of your senses, and it allows you to more rawly feel them. And I've had that theory since I was like a teenager, and did about 100 acid trips. But there is some biochemical reasons for that, basically, that it turns everything up.
It just
Yeah.
I believe the difference between I think it's one of the cannabinoids and the naturally occurring one in our brain is
DMT.
Well, there's
it
actually a
might
few
be
that are.
it's literally the same molecule, it's just the other way up.
Oh,
Let's say.
yeah.
There's another one
cannabinoids.
of the hallucinogens that has a carbon that's on the bottom instead of the top, or the other way around. I can't remember which one it is, but yeah, it's all to do with the receptors in the brain and how closely the molecule, the hallucinogen, fits into those receptors, and that's what sends the sparks off in the brain.
I'm only going to say my experience with this, which is that anytime I've been on any either hallucinogen or any kind of recreational drug, I always feel when I'm on them that I'm thinking superior, and alcohol, same thing, that I am in my current state, I am more in tune with the universe than I have ever been. And then I get off it, and then I read my notes of all the awesome things I said, and I'm like, my desk is buttered on the wrong side, and I'm like, I really don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And so I have a hard time believing this isn't a proof against it, but suggests to me I would have a hard time believing that these drugs, which would lend towards people thinking that they enhance that's what they do. I have every reason to see how stoned ape theory makes sense to have come about as a theory, but I don't understand how something that clearly impairs our judgment, our ability to see reality in any way that I can tell, it impairs it. I don't know how it could have created a new permanent state.
Let me just get in there if I can. That's kind of the appealing part to me, because one of the things like taking acid really does for you is to disassociate your senses, right? maybe not so much with smell, but certainly with sight and feeling, I guess, and those kind of things. And so, if anything, it sends you into your mind and makes your mind more isolated, right? So it disassociates you from the
I think
outside.
that's the perception. Yes, I don't know that that's the reality.
Well, no, the perception is
okay.
very different. I can assure you. The perception
Well-
is that everything in the world is much more colorful or slower. Time is distorted.
Is it
does a
more
lot to
smelly
your
I
or
was
brain.
less?
trying to make
Disassociate-
is simply
Yeah.
that it's different.
As you get it, it feels. I mean, especially as you cut off your reliable access to sensation, you're going to, even if it doesn't affect your perception of consciousness in any way, you're going to, or sorry, if it doesn't affect your consciousness in any way, you're still going to perceive enhanced consciousness because all of the other inputs are louder now that you've made certain ones softer. It doesn't mean that they actually are. You're just perceiving it that way. So you're
No,
perceiving
not
that
at
you're
all.
going into your own
But
mind
that's not
because
what
you
Well,
cut off everything else.
That's just not what happens when you trip.
Yeah. I mean that's a pretty good explanation if you try to justify. I mean, I would be really more blunt, and I would ask you if you ever seen a sad idiot. You
Yeah.
don't, and
Yeah.
this is what happens when you're on drugs. You're kind of an idiot, and
Mhm.
of course you're happy and you think you're fucking brilliant, and then you just the drugs goes away. Say, oh fuck me, I mean that was really stupid. But while you're an idiot, you're not sad. No, and that's another problem with humanity in general. They don't realize they're idiots and they think they're brilliant.
So Simon, if I could ask a question real quick,
Yeah.
specifically when you were writing this title, A, what hallucinogens were you on, and B, what prompt did you use
Right.
on ChatGPT? Because this is not so. Yeah, I'm just.
And does
I've been
it
trying
come
to
in a
figure that out.
candle?
Yeah.
Sorry, could you just formulate the questions again for me one at a time? So, I'm trying to type it into ChatGPT, and it's not
You're
giving me
trying to
the
get
right answers.
ChatGPT. What is the?
I think-
Basically, I can't remember. I had it written down already, and what didn't come from ChatGPT, the original title. I had to shorten the title to get it into YouTube. But that original title, I think I was talking with Brian, and he said, "Oh, what about this title? Something to do." And then I rephrased it into what it was.
Well, and so
I'm trying to
Is it?
remember that conversation
No, I can't remember because it's in the list I've got of topics.
because I remember we were talking about it, and I think I
you know,
think I probably did
Mike
have
was there.
stoned ape theory in mind, but I'm curious as to where the centered awareness came from.
Oh no, have we evolved from smells? And then for some reason, I might have typed that into ChatGPT, and it said, "Did the glimmer of first did the first glimmer of consciousness
Oh.
emerge as a kind of centered awareness?" So
Did we
I think you're
evolve
right.
from smells?
That was-
Mike, I was curious. If hallucinogens can mess with your eyes and your ears, does it
Yep.
also mess with your smell?
It can
Make
mess
it more
with
intense.
absolutely everything, even your heart, your control
But it's
of
just-
your organs.
I would disagree with the idea that it cuts senses off or distorts them. It gives
Yeah.
you more of a raw feel of what your senses are delivering to you, and it's all at once. It's everything all at once. And Nick, the reason that the buttering the wrong side of your desk seemed hilarious or seemed really, really great is because the one thing it does is it turns on novelty. You can look at a thing from a very, very different point of view. So you end up with your novelty is extremely heightened. So you'll say something and you'll just laugh your ass off like you'd never heard it before. And that's really kind of cool.
They do that on Family Guy. Stewie and Brian both get stoned, and Stu goes, "Wait! I figured it out.
Oh Jesus!
What if the only reason we die is because we think we're gonna die?"
Yeah.
I've had
Okay, so-
conversations not too dissimilar to that. I will
Okay, so-
confess.
So with the drugs thing, with the acid thing, I was saying, Like what actually happens is it cuts your senses off to some degree, or makes them a lot less sensitive to
Really?
external. Go ahead.
I have just the opposite experience. It turns everything.
Well, if you
There's
get,
an analgesic property
let me
to
get,
it, I think.
let
is
me
what-
get to the
yeah.
end of the sentence, and then maybe you'll agree. I don't know.
Okay, please do get to the end of the sentence.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Get
So
to
what
the end.
So
happens
whenever
is,
you're ready, we'll just sit here and listen.
thank you very much. So what happens
My
is,
pleasure. It's so glad. It's been so long since I've been on
tends
too. I know you missed
it
me.
tends to diminish. Oh my god!
Yeah. I mean, Nick,
Simon,
stop,
you know you can just mute him, right?
stop interrupting him. Let him finish. Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead,
Fabio,
Simon.
that's very rude. You should just, let Simon speak, please.
I was actually
This
trying
is
to
all
let
your
Simon
fault,
speak.
Nick.
You're still
to
doing
not
it.
to
You're still
interrupt him,
doing
but
it.
I
You're
have
still
to tell you too not to
interrupting him.
interrupt.
Come on.
Go ahead, Simon. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
Please.
Simon, you know you can just mute
Simon.
him instead of interrupting you, right?
In the last moment, I've just done a heroic dose of acid, so I don't give a fuck anymore, right? I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to fixate on this one point. The reason I'm going to do that is because I don't give, my mind is not taking in as many inputs as it was. So what happens is that it literally diminishes your inputs from your senses. And what happens is your brain then starts filling in those missing parts and making everything a little more what you remember it to be and not what it actually is, right? And it's very easy to miss stuff, right? And then your mind will just recreate it without you knowing, because that's what the mind does, right? It just fills in shit that you don't know. If it feels again, because it has to make sense of the inputs that are coming in, and the inputs are just all squiggled. Let's put it that way.
It's like the ghost lib phenomenon.
Yeah. So exactly. And so what happens is, I think this is what could potentially be an answer for stoned ape, is that that then disassociates your mind, right, and allows those trippy feelings of hallucinogenic experiences to happen, right, because you can feel they are reality still. Right. So that is disassociating the mind from the real physical world and isolating it to some degree. And I think if you do that quite a lot, you tend to get into the psychosis of not being able to trust what the actual inputs that you have are. And that can lead to some kind of self-awareness of the mind being independent from reality.
But that's using mind and brain interchangeably in that
Sure.
example.
Well, I think they are interchangeable, Nick. I'm
And
sorry.
let us not forget that we are
I'm not a dualist.
We are discussing this from a perspective of how hallucinogens affect the human brain as it currently stands.
Through evolution.
What Stoned Ape is alluding to is way back in our evolution, before we had the sort of functionality and connections, conscious connections with our input senses that we do currently. So the effect of hallucinogens on a brain at that stage in development could well be quite different from the way it affects us now, because the way we are now, we have we have chemicals in our brains that go into these receptors naturally, from diet, from just the way our brain functions and the chemicals it releases, right? So we have chemicals that we produce naturally and use naturally in those receptors anyway. So
yeah,
but the point is, what effect would it have had on brains that hadn't developed those receptors quite as robustly and incorporated within the mechanism of the brain and survival? And
I don't think that effect is significant, or if it exists at all. I mean, we have plenty of animals that go on drugs that have been on the earth maybe longer than us, and they haven't developed anything significant in terms of however you measure intelligence, stuff like that. I mean, dolphins, for fuck's sake. I mean, dolphins, they eat puffish and to get high.
Yeah.
And I mean, dolphin is a pretty intelligent being, but I wouldn't compare it, to humans or stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I don't
And
think
there
it
are
has
there are orchards where animals will
yeah.
let
So
stuff fall to the ground and rot before they try and eat it.
yeah. So I
Oh,
mean, I would discard that idea. I mean, just on the basis that we have examples already of
Yeah. I
things
mean,
that assume
one
drugs.
thing
I
one
think
thing that mammals do seem to be prone to is they do enjoy getting high when it's safe to do so.
yeah,
Yeah.
I will agree on that point.
Well, apes especially, right?
I
Well, no, I mean even deer and squirrels and monkeys and rabbits, they'll eat rotten fruit.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
No.
not sure that that is like I think that our sense of smell had to be like well developed before all of that. I I mean, especially like we were saying how like the olfactory bulb is like so like directly wired
Right.
into the brain and like it is such like an old structure in the brain. And the way that like we react to certain chemicals and stuff that like we aren't even aware of it, but like I feel like those things have like changed human development. Like what's I can't remember the name of there's a chemical that like um babies and small children like emit this chemical from like their heads in the back of their neck. And I think you probably know the smell of it. It's the smell of like the baby smell, the new baby smell. And they've proven like in like multiple experiments that it like makes men less aggressive and it makes women more aggressive. Right? Which like
Wow.
it
That's
kind of seems like the only time where that would be like a good functional thing is like around small children, right? But like even when we are unaware, when it is like at a level where we are unaware of it consciously, it will still have these effects on us. We
Yeah,
have
that's
an effect
pheromones, isn't it?
to well, pheromones isn't necessarily I don't think an accurate word for when we're discussing humans and mammals in general, but like for instance, we know subconsciously the difference in the smell of somebody's sweat if it is like an exertion sweat or a fear sweat. And if we smell somebody's sweat that is a fear sweat, even if we can't consciously say, oh, like that is a fear sweat, it will like elevate our heart rate and it will like begin to like put us into not necessarily a state of flight type state, but it will begin to like prepare our body for those types of things because it makes our body recognize, okay, somebody here was afraid. There's something here to be afraid of.
All
And
right,
I
I'd
think
love to know the name of that. Could you look that up for us, please, Ella?
sure.
Thanks. Just I'd love to know the name because that might be related to something that Mike and I have in common, which is one of our favorite studies.
So there's two things. Number one, the stoned ape theory it's kind of Lamarckian, and it's difficult to understand
It's kind
how
of silly.
taking a hallucinogen would modify our genes or change the course of our evolution, and that's why I don't really care for the stoned ape theory. And that, but it's cool. And the other thing, Simos, when you say it shuts off the senses,
I
totally
don't mean
wrong.
shut off. I don't mean shut off in a literal sense.
Well, what it does, like, okay, if you take a heavy dose of acid and you're looking at a table, the table will start to wave. It'll have all kinds of waves in it, weird shit like that. That is actually what your eyes and your visual system are reporting. The reason you think a table's flat is because you add all this cortical input to it and you predict it to be flat. So you're looking more at what you predict the world to be when you're not on psychedelics. And when you're on psychedelics, you get more of what is really happening to your senses and your body.
I mean, when I've done, hang on a minute. When I've done large
neurotransmitters in the brain
What's that?
associated with things like sight. That LSD works by disrupting neurotransmitters in the brain associated with sight, which is why
it increases the way they fire. It increases the threshold that they will fire at, and it has more of an effect on your visual system, LSD and psilocybin, than anything else because you have more of these 5H2A receptors in your visual cortex. And so that's one thing that it does. But it basically lights up your whole cortex so that you're no longer predicting the way you normally do.
But that's
that's why
it's the drug. It's the drug interfering with the receptor rather than the particular neurotransmitter. I thought like it's mimicking it in such a way that it disrupts how your eyes, your vision would normally function in the brain because it's not the neurotransmitter, it's mimicking it, and that's where that if you take LSD, it's often described as sort of a kaleidoscopic effect on the world. That's where that comes from. So it's not that that's the way the world. I mean, I don't think that's the way the world actually is. But that it's taking what the brain normally does and saying, let's mimic this in kind of a shitty way and produces this other thing.
If I could just get in there, Mike, a second, if you respond to that. I'll just give you two examples to ask you how these fit in with what you just said, which is enhanced colors. Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you always see, have the feeling that these colors are more green, are more red, are more differentiated from each other? If that's what the real world is really like, that doesn't seem exactly right. And then secondly, why when I did a fucking, I don't know, 600 mushroom trip, 600 mushrooms, cup of tea, in 1980, whatever it was, did I see elephants in the clouds coming to get me?
Yeah.
I mean, that can't have been more real than what was actually happening, right? That was obviously hallucination and made up by the mind.
I never said.
Go ahead.
I never said that reality was like that. What I said is this is what your senses actually come up with. Okay, reality it basically is like you think it is. The table is flat, but that's because you've learned that over years, and that's what you predict it to be. That isn't what you see. What you see is just a kind of what you see is what you get on LSD and really high doses. That's what's coming in, but you're doing this massive prediction of what the world should really look like, and so you add all that. So most of what we see when we're in ordinary life is what we have learned the world to be like, rather than how the world really is, or how our senses are really providing it. But
if I may provide another perspective on this,
I want to retract that. I want to retract that last thing. The world really is the way we learn it to be over time, with multiple inputs from our senses. And then when you take a psychedelic, all that kind of goes to hell. And you start and Leo, what happens is it hits the serotonin receptor, and it doesn't change the brain, except that it changes the threshold that it will fire at. So something will make it fire more. Something from the outside will make it more. The psychedelic makes it more likely to fire. Yeah. Right.
If I may,
because you have more
another perspective to this. That there have been studies that show people witnessing the same event can actually come up with quite different stories because of the way they remember it. And the way they remember it is that there are key moments and their brain fills in the rest.
Yeah.
Now, but that has nothing to do with...
Hang on, let me finish.
Yeah.
Now, during the general course of our everyday, our brain does an awful lot of work filling in the gaps. People have they've also done studies about how people read, and a lot of that is they take key points and they fill in the gaps. So our brain is doing an awful lot of this, and when you take a hallucinogen, what happens is the bit of your brain that's doing that work stops working.
It's working. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Correct.
basically, you're getting the same input, but your brain is doing less work filling in the gaps. So what you're
Yeah.
getting is very distorted.
And that's
Because
why it
you're
seems
I
so
guess I
feeling
just
raw.
don't look at it as the drug is removing some shroud your brain was putting on the way that you were perceiving information, and now you're perceiving it in a differently. That it's affecting the normal operation of the brain. That's what's changing your perception. Your
But where the
brain's
normal-
not
where
working
the
properly.
potential, where
Now
the,
that doesn't mean
where
it's
the,
bad, but
hang on,
I mean,
where
I mean,
potential
there is a
for
change
creativity-
as is
where the-
affecting the brain, But I mean, I'm struggling with the fact that it's
Where
better
the-
or worse without any drugs. Because honestly, I mean,
No, there's no
listen, I
quality.
just want to say, that what I've heard so far, it reminds me more of the plot of The Man Who Stare at Goats, rather than what actually happens. So I don't know. Maybe we got different drugs here, but that's
What,
I want to know
Those
why
are calorie
Simos sounds
drugs.
like he was so much more fun 30 years ago than he is now. Why am I hanging out with this Simos?
I know, right? That sucks, man. I know.
Yeah. Well, the problem is
Fuck
you don't have a time machine. That's the problem. And yeah, no, it's and I think it was more like 40 years ago.
Now,
But
I
anyway,
thought so
all
too,
I
but
was
I was
gonna
trying
say-
to be polite.
I would have hooked you up, Nick. Don't you worry. I would have hooked you up.
I'm sure.
You know, don't you
It's
worry
actually
about that.
Nick is actually right. He's 30, but you get so many drugs that it looks like 40 to you.
Yeah,
So-
I have no idea. To be
I know,
honest,
right? Yeah.
I have no idea. Could be any amount of years.
If there is any space for creativity to come out of hallucinogens, then it lies in your ability to fill in those gaps differently.
That is another thing which is not true. I mean, the fact
No,
that people
I'd
is
say-
more creative on drugs than not.
Listen carefully.
It
Fabio.
really depends
I
from
said-
the person.
I said
It's not.
if there is any space for, not saying there is, I said if there is, then that would be where it would lie. It's in the way that your brain does the processing to fill in the gaps, to make sense of the input data that it's stopped doing.
You're exactly
Yeah,
right.
I mean-
Yeah, that's it.
I'm not
but
sure I agree
the
with
thing
this
about that,
filling in the gaps language. I don't think the brain fills in gaps. I think the brain
Yeah.
interprets, and I see that
It
as something
does.
different than filling in gaps.
if you
I
didn't
just
fill
feel
in
like
gaps,
there's a bit more
the reason I
nuance to
phrased
how
it
the
that way
brain
is because
operates
the
to provide a
studies-
coherent, conscious picture
The
that,
studies,
that
the
is the
studies
agent.
use observational data, and the way they correlate the results, it's on things that people don't see that are there.
yep,
Well, it's more like I don't know if it's filling the gaps, Lovelace, but it is proven. And I'm talking about people not on drugs, right? For a
Yeah,
change.
yeah, just normal people.
I mean, the brain literally makes shit up, and that's why personal testimony is the worst ever testimony that can be. It's pointless, right? I mean, somebody says, "Oh, I saw that guy." Fuck it, You ask the 5 guys which were on the same spot, and they will tell you a different story about it, because the mind makes shit up. That's proven.
I don't know if
No.
I agree with that. I think that what the
Well,
brain
I
does
mean,
is it
you don't have to
interprets
agree.
things, and
That-
that what
that's-
happens is rather than the brain, like when somebody misremembers something, it's not that the brain made something up so much as it is the brain filtered the information of that experience through a variety
listen.
of cognitive biases
That-
and priors that shaped a different picture that
You-
the agent has that differs from what actually happened.
You're missing
you-
what Fabio's saying, Leo.
yeah,
I
you-
don't
mean, you-
think that I am.
Well, you don't have to think that it's incorrect. You just got to read, the data which is available.
I've
and
had discussions with neuroscientists about this.
Well,
I'm
I mean, you
familiar with
probably-
where the field stands on this.
You probably spoke with the wrong ones, because
I
that is
have
actually
not.
something.
They are people
well,
with
the thing is,
PhDs in things like computational neuroscience.
Leo, sorry, is it speaking bothering you? Interrupted me, because I just want to know. Are we on the same page here? right? So I'm telling you, this is an established fact. And it's also proven by the fact that, if you have a memory of something and you keep recalling that memory is changing just by the fact of recalling that memory. Because your brain is literally making shit up.
Yeah, I don't agree with that language. I don't think the
Yeah,
brain
your
makes
issue is
it
with
up.
the. I think it's talking past. I think Leo wants to use a much finer grade of language than I think Fabio is using. But I think Fabio,
Yeah.
I think you're both correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you're
The essential facts are that your brain retains key points of information, and what it does is strings those key points of information together the best way that it can using what it's got available to it. And if it hasn't got a small detail, it will put something in there regardless. Yeah. That's at essence of what is being said here.
Yeah, it's like when you look at it.
That's just demonstrable fact. It's been proven time and time again in so many different ways and so many different studies. That's how our brains work.
If you look at a bookshelf and you see all the book bindings, you have this sense that you're looking at each individual book, that you can see them, but there's no way your eye can do that. Your eye only has resolution at the very center. And also in the very center, there's a big cardboard hole cut out that you never see because your mind fills it in, basically, because your retina or the nerves are in front. And so you do all this processing and you come up with, like, basically the world is rectangular and Cartesian coordinates, right? But then your senses get a hold of them and you're moving your head around, your eyes are whipping back and forth, and there's all kinds of distortion that happens. And you take all of that input, this multi-sensory stuff, and it goes through the part of your brain that processes it because you've learned from the time you were a child how things are supposed to look. And you come up with the way the world is again, a Cartesian coordinate system, right? Rectangular. But your senses do not report that at all. You have to have this multimodal thing going on with your eyes flicking around. Like when you look at something like a bookshelf, your eyes are doing this thing they call a saccade. They're kind of zipping back and forth and stitching together the image, basically, with your real high-res center of your vision. And it's absolutely amazing that we see things the way we do, which is the way they really are in the world, to give Leo a bone. but we're a piece of meat, right? Electrical meat. And we're not, our senses are really not all that good at putting that together. It's your brain that does it. So basically, Brian, yeah, that's what you were saying. Basically, you fill it all in. Yeah. And of course, when you take psychedelics, all that gets screwed up. The more you take, the more screwed up it gets. And the problem with that is when you start seeing things like your room, right? The room that you're in every day, you will stop noticing most of it. You won't notice little details of change. And so your life becomes more mundane. And then, so this,
if I may just interrupt you just briefly there, Mike, on that point. Yeah. If something is unchanged for months and months on end, and one thing disappears or moves, you may just get a feeling of unease that something is not right.
Yeah.
But that's it.
You get some report, right? But the thing is that our lives become mundane. And then when people take psychedelics, the reason that it excites them so much is the most mundane things appear novel to you. Like you've never tasted cinnamon before or whatever. And this Pessoa that you're talking about, he kind of makes a big thing of that the right way to think is to, experience things more in the raw. So anyway.
I'd like to give Leo the right reply, as it were. Did you have anything you
right
wanted to reply, Leo? Or
he has no rights.
I don't disagree with anything that's been said.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
Good.
I didn't want you to feel like
good.
you weren't able to speak or anything like that?
No, it's all good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I'm
where does that
all
leave
right
us?
to
I mean,
reply.
okay, so I think we basically debunked apes making the Beatles records.
Yeah.
So,
Well, no. We haven't
No?
actually, because
No.
that those four were definitely apes.
Yes, they were.
They were great apes of the
Yes.
genus Homo
Okay,
sapiens.
yes, sure. I wasn't quite using the word ape in that manner. But yeah, no, we can do that if you like. She loves you, ooh, ooh, ooh. Well, that's definitely a monkey's song, right? Yeah. What else? And I banana. That
The
was another great one by then.
on the hill.
I'm definitely going to have more bacon next time I come here.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
I'm desperately trying to think of other ape jokes as we took on monkey jokes.
Yeah, you should have 2 bananas, so at least you can eat one.
Yeah.
How about that joke? Right?
Yeah. There we go.
You-
I love it.
Cue
Actually,
the
I quite like
goodies
it.
and Funky Gibbon.
Quite like it indeed. And why not? Why not?
There's an assassin here now.
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent.
I'm very
Welcome, welcome.
sneaky.
Oh boy. Shh. Shut
yes.
up now. Shut up. Change
I think-
subject.
I think
No
it
more
is.
bananas. No more bananas now.
No
Stop.
more LSD.
Yeah. Stop talking about bananas.
No more LSD.
Yeah, it
I'm
wasn't a
not gonna lie,
joke.
I prefer,
Trust
I
me.
prefer psilocybin.
Yeah, I don't know how
LSD.
they got on like the whole topic of forget. It's supposed to be talking about
That
like
was
sense of
Brian. That
smell.
was Brian. That was Brian.
But
Although to
Going
be
on
fair,
about
maybe they
fucking
were monkeys because they did write Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. So maybe they were trying to tell us something.
That wasn't the monkey.
They were just in human costumes.
No,
You
talking
did
about
say
the
that was the
Scottish
monkeys
ladies
to
with
troll
Paul
us.
Parkinson?
that was the bugs. The monkeys were something completely different, almost, but not quite, going on in California.
He did mention the monkeys though, and he mentioned a monkey song prior. So
Yeah.
I think he was doing a double callback.
Oh
That's what-
well,
that's just-
yeah,
That's,
okay.
That's exactly what I was doing, Nick. Thank you so much. It's good to have you here.
The
It's good to have
stoned
you.
monkeys.
Yeah, you say that now. You weren't saying that an hour ago, but at any rate.
Well, an hour ago, I wasn't trying to set you up with a threesome.
That bug is always welcome.
I love Nick. I want Nick to be here because it was the only one which got the Man of Steel Goats references. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, fair enough. The banana splits. Yeah, that's another good reference. Thank you.
Oh,
Mike.
the banana splits. That's a good. Oh man, you flashback. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Simus, I was wondering, can I answer the question proposed as the thesis for this discussion? And
Oh
probably
yes,
piss-
please.
piss
That
a few
would
people
be
off?
brilliant. Yeah, to get us back on conscious.
Did consciousness emerge as a kind of scented awareness? That depends on what you mean by scented awareness. I think no. I think that consciousness. I think it's emergent. I think it's biological. I don't think it's computational. I think it's biological. I think it's an emergent process. I think it's rooted in functions and processes sustained by the brain as it metabolizes. I think smell is a very important part of it because I think one of the most important aspects of consciousness as a system, because I view it as a system, a process that is sustained rather than like an object, which is why when people say, well, where in the brain is consciousness? That doesn't make it's like asking where in the gut is digestion. Digestion is a process sustained by the entirety of the gut working together. So I think that the senses, and I don't just mean the traditional 5 senses, are probably one of the most important features of consciousness and of why we are as conscious and as aware as we are. I think if you could take a human and remove even just the 5 senses, the 5 traditional senses, that over time their conscious awareness would slowly begin to deteriorate. So I think that this integration of multisensory information is one of the primary contributing factors to the level of awareness that humans, and I think other mammals like elephants, octopodes, dolphins, other apes
Mammals in
as
general.
a result of that.
Yeah. Oh, just to put this out there, the way you read the thing is only because YouTube wouldn't let me put the full title in. which is this, did the first glimmer of consciousness emerge as a kind of centered awareness? I don't know if that changes anything, but I think it concurs more with what you just said anyway. So.
That I'll put it this way: the olfactory perceptive apparatus certainly contributed. I think that and probably sight are the two most important, and then sound would be really, really close behind them in terms of the kind of information that, this is simplistic language, but that sort of builds a level of consciousness like what we have.
Well, it's almost a chicken or an egg kind of problem, because you would need, I mean, scent being so basic to how we perceive, as we were talking about earlier, especially early on, if we're talking about early consciousness, if there's no consciousness, what does scent mean?
Yeah, likewise, let me just clarify a couple of points that I was kind of getting at by this title. Firstly, when I say consciousness, I mean some kind of mind apparatus. And that's not, and I don't mean consciousness the way we think of mind, the mind-brain distinction. That isn't what I was trying to get at. I was literally thinking about having some operating system which, shall we say, intuited like a differential between the sensory inputs and its motor system. So that's kind of where I was going with that. And then centered awareness was more to do with how that sense has been developed. Like, so eyes are quite, are they before olfactory senses? And certainly, when we talk about hearing, well, that's got to be later, clearly, right? Because the inner ear bone is really part of a jaw, so that certainly can't be the case. And when I say consciousness, I think fish have consciousness in this use of the word consciousness that I'm getting to. I don't know if that makes it clearer what I was trying to do. And I appreciate everybody's input talking about humans and stuff, because it's more interesting than what I was originally suggesting.
Yeah, if you're going back that far, and the addition of the word glimmer of consciousness, that does, it does, in my mind, it does tie the question down, and I would agree with the premise as laid out in the question, and I think it does. It goes back to when everybody were fish.
Yeah, or maybe earlier. I don't know. I mean, it could potentially go back to
possibly earlier, but I would say
plants
fish
on the land, for instance. But I'm not sure. I don't know, because I'm not an evolutionary biologist. Fabio, you were going to say something.
No, I mean, I think that if you go that route of I would say defining consciousness, but describing consciousness, as you said, as the steps that the mind takes from a single input or whatever, and being able to recollect stories or feelings that happened in the past, I mean, making a story out of it. I mean, I think you're on the right path here, also because I think that the ability to perceive scent is one of the first senses that arises in animals. I mean, I'm on a, might be super wrong here, but
You're
I think
not.
that's okay.
Taste and scent are the two most primitive.
But I think that's the case. So if we give credit to the fact that we perceive the world through our senses, and we are able to relate to the world and the other people and ourselves through the senses, I mean, I would say that definitely the sense of smell is one of the first proponents, if not by the fact that, as I said, it was one of the first senses. So, that would be, yeah.
That was a good one.
That was a good one.
That was good. But yeah, I just looked it up, Fabio, and taste and scent are considered to be the two most primitive senses in animals today.
Yeah.
And then touch would probably come after that, and then probably sight, and then sound.
Yeah. And it's also funny, something that Mino said at the beginning. We were talking about dogs. I think that, I mean, I'm not really sure. I think they have a better sense of smell, but I'm not an expert, so I'm not pushing that angle. Uh, but I think that we as humans, we have developed more other senses, and we rely less on others. Specifically, we give way more credit, to eyes or ear, than smell and touch and taste. That doesn't mean that we cannot smell things that animals are usually able to smell. I mean, well, okay. I got a story which I won't tell live later on. I mean, Christopher knows about it. But it's not uncommon, for example, to when you're cooking something, to smell if it's salty or not, and that's weird because salt. Yeah, I mean, how can you smell salt? You can actually smell if something is salty or not before tasting it. So I mean, I know some people can do that. So there is that. It's the fact that we have subdued some senses shouldn't make them less important, or yeah.
I think a lot of that subdued senses when you're smelling food, especially for you and me, Fabio, comes because of the fact that we smoke.
I think with the dog isn't it with the nose has more like surface areas, so it can like better detect. So it's taking in the same amount of air, but it because of the design of it has like more, like I said, more surface area or something like somebody was saying earlier, to smell their way around.
Well, I have a question about
the smoking part. Sorry, just be super quick. I mean, the smoking part, I'm not really so sure about that. I mean, if you talk about taste, it might be, but the smell part, I'm not really so sure about that. Well, okay.
Well,
I just want to say quickly, thank you very much to Nick for coming by. It's a pleasure to see you again. You're welcome anytime.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, from my own personal experience. When I've given up smoking, I apologize for presuming to speak for your experience as well.
No.
But from my experience, both taste and smell do come back when I don't smoke.
Don't apologize, Brian. It's only because you said it's something that I could relate because I smoke, and I said in my experience is different. It's all the fault.
No, also Brian. Yeah, he is from Italy, and we know what they're like with their noses. They're a little further south of France, but that doesn't mean they're any less important.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So I just fact checked something. So humans have about 6 million olfactory receptors. Dogs have about 300 million. And they have something like 30 times as large a receptor area in their noses. So the receptor area that basically where all the individual receptors are is 30 times as big in dogs. St. Bernards can smell a man through 20 feet of snow.
That's amazing.
Although it does help, by the way, guys, if you just wet your nose a little bit, that can help the smell sometimes.
I have a question though. Okay, let's say like we became transhumanist people or whatever. We like get a bionic nose.
Well,
I have a question. Dogs interpret smells a certain way. I'll give you an example. You can train a dog to smell somebody's a dog can they think with the sense of smell that a dog can sense when a seizure is going to come on someone.
Oh yeah,
there's already working dogs that are there purely to alert their owners of oncoming seizures.
Does a dog interpret scent differently than we do? And it's more than just power. Do they cognitively interpret it differently?
Well, they obviously can be trained to react in certain ways to certain smells.
Just like a spider. Okay, spider's a bad example because they don't have the level of consciousness that like it. Anyway, they probably interpret. Let's just assume there was like a superconscious spider, not like humans, but like a dog or something. They see differently. They can see in infrared, so
Right.
their conscious experience of sight would be different than it would be for us because we can't. So I would say yes, simply because of the vast richness of that experience, that there's got to be some sort of cognitive difference in how that's interpreted. And think of the differences, the variations in smell that are so subtle that a dog could be able to detect that we couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I agree. I mean, it's the same way that because of the fact that we can see better than dogs. I mean, you can see some colors that they don't. We can have a better interaction with the world, with our eyes. So we rely more on that organ rather than the dog because it works better. And for the dogs, it's the other way around. I mean, it's funny. One of the things we used to do with our German Shepherd is, especially when they're young, I just tell my wife or one of my kids, just go and hide somewhere, right? And then I tell the dog to go look for my wife or my kid. The funny thing is that he will not he will not look where he or she has gone, but he will follow exactly the path that she took. And if
Yeah.
she makes a circle, he will make a circle. It's fucking unbelievable. I mean, if you don't see it, you won't believe it. You say, well, what the fuck is this? And it's funny because the way he behaves, it is as if he's actually seeing the steps. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. I mean, that goes like don't know if you've ever heard this, but there was a blind guy that learned to use clicks to visualize the world, right? And he would literally walk around
like a bat.
Like a bat, yeah.
Like he literally learned to echolocate.
And
he invented his
he could
own
ride a bike
sonar.
and stuff.
He was basically saying that he had a visual idea of what the world was like. His visual cortex was constructing a pattern of what the world was actually like. And I guess it's the same for dogs, right? Because they rely so much on smell that their smell gives them a literal pattern of what the world's like. And I think it's a great example you use there, Fabio, because you're saying that they go round to follow exactly where the person went.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's part of their world, right? Is that little circle is now going to be part of their world, and they'll go back and repeat it even when the smell's gone. I'm sure they would just go back and go, "Oh yeah, I've been here. Here we go."
Humans will do that too.
No, the other funny thing is that and then the other funny thing, and then let's shut up is in that example, if only the dog raised his head and looked, he would have seen my wife.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't really hiding that well. The fact that he didn't even raise his head to rely on his eyes, and he just relied on his nose, and it took him way more because he had to make all the path. So it's what you rely on. If you have something which works, you rely on it. I mean, that's pretty much.
Exactly. And that's their picture of the world, though. That's what I'm getting to.
Yes.
That's why he didn't raise his head, because all of that brain power that normally that we put to our eyes to visualize the world, we even use the word visualize, but all of that brain power was going to his nose to recreate what was around him.
Mm-hmm.
So he was also sniffing the sofa and the table and this bit of carpet with this circle in where this scent goes around,
Mm-hmm.
There's
when it comes to echolocation, though, I mean, it's interesting that a blind man's able to do it, but there are a lot of, I mean, whales do it, dolphins do it, bats do it.
Yeah. All with shit eyesight, if you notice.
Well, I mean, whales. Before we polluted the air, the shipping. Oceans with shipping, whales and dolphins used to communicate across literal oceans using their clicks and what's-its.
Yeah, like I'm saying, all with shit eyesight, and that's because that area of the brain is used and
but the thing,
a different sense. That's the point.
But who needs eyes when with a few clicks you can map the whole of the Atlantic Ocean?
Yeah, but if they had eyes, right, and they could see that far, right, then that area of the brain would be linked to the eyes, not linked to
Yeah.
another sense. They're literally the brain reconfigures. This guy, I don't think this guy was blind from birth either. I think he was blind from being from quite a young child, but he'd used his eyes in life first, and his brain had developed, like a visual cortex in his brain. But once he became blind, he then reconfigured that to have
Yeah,
his
he hooked it
ear,
into
to have
his
his ears
auditory.
connected to that visual cortex.
Yeah. The point that I was making, and it hooks back
Yeah.
into your premise, that the overall consciousness of the being concerned, the blind man, the dolphin, the bat, the whale, their perception of the world is governed and informed by all of that sensory information.
I mean, just to be on the safe side, this guy's name is not Matt Murdock, and he doesn't dress in red and roams the roofs of Hell's Kitchen in New York, right? I mean, it's not that guy. It's another guy.
I don't know who you're talking about.
No, it's not Daredevil. It's not.
I don't know, but watch out for him.
Fair enough. Fair
It's
enough.
not
Yeah.
Daredevil.
I figured you were going
That took
somewhere
a
like
minute.
that. No.
That took a minute, but no, it's not Daredevil. No.
But
Yeah, okay,
it's
fair enough.
it's a remarkably subtle, thing that he's developed. Like, because he will walk around lampposts and things like that.
But that's kind of
But-
how it works.
Sure. Oh, I don't know about you, but sometimes I walk into lampposts because I
Yeah.
can't see
Well, I
them.
mean, what I'm getting at is that every
doesn't.
sentient creature has, a working 3D model of their environment that they live
Sure.
in.
Yeah. Well, they
And
think
it's,
they do. Yeah.
and that is informed by sight. It's informed by sound. Whatever
Separate
senses
senses.
you've got at your disposal, up to and including using a clicker and remapping your auditory
Mhm.
equipment
So-
into your seeing eye cortex.
So I wanna click the conversation a bit, without trying to derail too much from the topic, but something that Leo, said at the beginning about consciousness. Well, I mean, what he thinks conscious. I mean, and which I kind of agree. What he thinks consciousness is, and how it arose. So my question would be, if consciousness, arises, from complexity, just put it super bluntly and super basic, okay? Did the senses like smell, sight, hear, whatever, helps raise the consciousness, or did we assign a lot of values to the senses because we had consciousness, because consciousness arose? So it's an egg and a chicken question.
I think the brain would have to develop the ability to philosophize in order for that to actually be a thing.
I think the senses contributed to the development of complex consciousness. As we developed evolutionarily, as we evolved more intricate and complex ways of receiving information from the external world, we developed the capability to more intricately interact with that external world, which has culminated in the consciousness of creatures like humans and elephants and dolphins and octopods and other apes and all that stuff. But I did want to give an analogy with like a dog smell. Even when we're sitting down and relaxing, we still, assuming that your eyes are not closed, you're still getting information from your eyes. It's not like a blank slate where you're not seeing anything, like it is with our scent. I imagine that's what it's like for a dog with scent. It's always smelling something somewhere or something like that. It's always receiving information through scent like we do through sight, but doesn't necessarily need to act on that all the time. Like we don't act on literally everything that we see. But also, I think we've all probably had moments in our lives where we smell something and in a obviously flowery sense, we almost feel transported back to a moment in time, a very
Mm.
nostalgic feeling. I imagine that like times 1,000 for when a dog smells something, where it smells something and it can almost visualize what is going on. And I think
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we have moments of
insane to think
deja.
about.
We have moments of deja vu, right? When we
But
think
that-
we've been somewhere and we suddenly remember a time where we're there, or we smell a lover, right? A lover scent, and it takes us back to those moments when we're in that thing. But I do think that, like the visual cortex as such, is a bit harder to stir. It's easy to do that with our other senses because we're not relying on those senses so much for our everyday locomotion, right? And although I completely agree with what you're saying, I had an example where, like I could hear my mum cooking right in the kitchen with the door shut, okay, and I heard the door open, and she'd been cooking, and I knew the smell from the food was coming out, and I looked at my dog, and of course she's like asleep on the sofa, and the first thing I see is the nose twitching as the smell from the food comes into the room. All right, and I'm looking at her, and then a head goes up. Right, is that my food or is that somebody else's food? And then of course Mum comes in and goes, "Jem, dinner," and that's it, all excited, right? Immediately up and running.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a follow-up question. So if if the senses helped the complexity which led to consciousness, and so if we had different senses, or some senses were more developed than the way we have right now, would we have developed a different kind of consciousness, or is consciousness just consciousness, regardless?
There's a fairly simple example. There are fairly simple examples within our species that answer that question. They all people that are born deaf, people that are born blind, that have never had any of that sensory input, yet they still develop and interact amongst humans as any other human. I don't know
You
if
guys
that
know
does
that deaf
answer your
people can
question,
actually
but
hear music.
Say what? Sorry?
Deaf people can hear music.
It depends.
I've asked a deaf person, let me explain. So he doesn't even have to put headphones in to get this experience. But if he puts headphones in, obviously it's amplified. He can feel the waves, the sound
Music
waves,
is,
like in
The vibration.
and he
it's
says like it's
vibration.
relaxing, like it.
It's
He
vibration.
told me like I get music, like I understand.
Yeah.
What that
Yeah,
is, even though I'm deaf.
Very
There is
common.
a whole.
thought that was the
There is a
coolest
whole.
fucking thing ever.
There is a whole science of biophysics connected with sound and how it makes us feel physiologically and affects us in those ways. There is actually science behind how dance music is constructed, for example, and it's constructed in such a way as to deliberately pull you onto the dance floor and make you dance. It's designed in ways to do that.
They do a good job because I'll tell you what, every time I hear I've been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? I'm fucking gone. I'm out there, man.
That's why there are so many
is
popular genres.
I just want to say this. There is a lady who she became deaf as a child, actually, again, but she became a classical percussionist, and she just plays barefoot and feels the vibration through the floors of the other musicians playing, and will lead them. Right, she's that good. She just leads them because she's the percussionist, right? And she can feel the changes in tempo of different people around her, the violins, the other instruments in the orchestra. And it's a number of instruments. It's quite a number of instruments. Or she plays solo as well, of course, and she has perfect timing because she's a great percussionist.
That's
she's
it's all
totally deaf,
vibration based.
It's
Yeah.
all vibration based, yeah.
But it
Glennie,
does bring me back to push back a little bit on something that you said a little while ago, Leo, about the expansion of consciousness and how it all sort of evolved. And I think it had more to do with the physical expansion of our brains, which happened once we started cooking meats.
I think that definitely played a part.
And that physiological change to our brains, particularly the frontal cortex, made a hell of a difference. And just expanded the way that we use our brains and the things that we can do with our senses.
There seems to be some selection going on what senses we prefer to use, but at the same time, we with these examples, we have the ability to kind of shift that, right? From relying, well, I can't see, so now I'm going to rely on my hearing, right? So it's kind of an evolutionary benefit that we have that ability to overcome an obstacle like that.
Yeah, I mean, being able to remap your auditory input to your visual cortex in itself is mind blowing.
Can I step in just for a second? I just wanted to go back to the vibration thing real fast and be like, so I play the bass sometimes, and Simos, you might be aware that sometimes basses, if the band's loud enough, you can't hear very well. The bassist sometimes kind of blends in with everything. I was told by a man that works sound and events that those butt kickers that they put inside of theaters were actually originally designed for bassists.
When you say butt kickers, what do you mean by that?
It's like a platform you stand on, and it vibrates.
Oh, okay.
And so that was originally invented, I guess, according to somebody I worked with in sound and events, for bassists, which is interesting. Which kind of makes sense because I played the bass before, and sometimes you cannot hear, like unless you have an ear monitor or something.
It sounds like basic sound box theory.
I think that's just bad mixing mostly, but yeah, for sure.
No, I think we're talking about acoustic instruments.
Yeah, for sure.
In which case they would need something like the orchestra pit to act as a sounding box.
Well, sometimes depending on like the space that you're playing in, if it doesn't reverberate the sound well, especially playing the bass, it's like the sound just goes out and
it just gets absorbed by the building.
Yeah.
Because again, it's the wavelength of the vibration,
and the audience will hear it just fine.
Well, of course, sound wavelengths are limited by the speakers as well.
It is a weird phenomenon that happens with bass, where the audience will be able to hear it, you won't be able to hear it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there's a complete difference between a speaker-based sound system and a live orchestra.
For sure.
And positioning of instruments in a live orchestra is very, very important, because you have to get the resonances right, and you have to get the reflections right, and all of that stuff.
Okay, should we go back to smell just for a little while, just because we're at an hour and a half?
That's what I was
wondering.
So
and you just want to get smelly again, don't you?
I thought I smelled something.
But yeah, getting back to smell, I would say that yes, smell would have been one of the earliest senses that would have triggered some sort of
it's connected
brain
to the
mechanism.
It's also connected to the limbic system as well.
I would imagine
smell explains what Leo was saying about memories. Go ahead, Mina.
It's also very much connected to like how we made connections as humans early on. Like it's like
very
before language, before we were able to
100%.
even.
Well, 100%. Like Mike was one of our things that we like to talk about is Patricia Churchland, isn't it, Mike? And of course, she did a study on oxytocin and the effects on monogamy.
Oxytocin.
And the effects on monogamy, right? And it turns out that these particular desert voles, I think they were, some were some had a high release of oxytocin and were very heavily affected by it, and they were the monogamous ones, and some weren't, and they were, or the males weren't, I think it was, and they weren't monogamous at all, or very
They weren't
rarely.
bonding.
They had many life partners, so to speak. But the women were all susceptible to it, and the reason being was postulated that was because of bonding with the child. And I think that, I'm not sure if that's the smell you were talking about earlier, Minnow.
That is totally a thing.
I looked it up actually, and I found the name of the chemical.
Okay.
That is the baby chemical here.
What was it?
The one that makes you not want to murder them. Because you're like, oh my
men
gosh.
not want to murder them. It makes women want to murder anything that threatens them.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the name of it then? What was the name of it?
It's
Minnow?
hexadecanol. I don't know how to say that. I put it in the side chat.
You sniff the little
Hexadecanol.
heads, and it's like magic. You just sniff the little crown of their head, and you're done.
Yeah.
Yep.
On
They should sell
kind
that
of
in
the
the spray
opposite
at the
end of
chemist.
that. So, and I was trying to find, I think it's called like the Brian effect in mice, where like
What?
if there's a pregnant mouse, they can basically like induce a miscarriage in the mouse by like bringing in the scent of like another male mouse that is not the father of the litter.
Oh,
and
weird.
like it will and it'll make the female mouse like induce a miscarriage. And humans still have like the like vestigial form of like whatever this organ is that is responsible for this reaction. And I thought it was interesting that I was looking at earlier, because I was trying to find like actually information on the study, but they were saying that they did on the experiment with the mice, but there was this study that they did on women who like couples who have had like multiple miscarriages, where they have like basically a history of unexplained miscarriages, that there's no other reason for it. And they found that like these women had like a more developed whatever this organ is. And weirdly enough, they found that for the most part, like you can kind of tell your friend's sweat from like your not friend's sweat, but like for the most part, we have actually kind of a hard time like telling, like if there's like 3 guys that we know, we don't necessarily know which one is the sweat of our partner. It's actually kind of weird.
There's actually a particular kind of sweat that I absolutely loathe, and I can tell you it smells sweet.
But they studied these women who had multiple unexplained miscarriages, and they found that they were far more likely to be able to identify the sweat of their partner than women who didn't have a history of miscarriages. And they think that it like might have to do with this organ that mice have.
That is fascinating. You know, like the baby magic thing too is interesting because of the oxytocin. When they finally realized that babies need skin to skin contact, and a lot of times there's a lot of times difficulty bonding with babies when the baby's maybe in an incubator for a long time, or maybe mom has a near-death experience, and obviously there's PTSD involved too, but like they weren't together early on. And that bonding experience, skin to skin contact, they were like, even for dad, you know, if you take your shirt off in the skin to skin contact, it helps the baby bond with you for whatever reason. It's like magic. It's the smell and it's the touch. It's interesting.
It's less like magic and more like evolution, but yes.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Well,
I mean, it's so
science
cool
magic.
because we didn't know that, you know, years ago. You know, we didn't know that years ago.
Yeah, no, as I say, there's Patricia Churchland did a series of experiments, shall we say, on voles. It was a vole population, 2 different types of voles. One which are famous for not being monogamous, and one which are famous for being monogamous. She found there was a strong difference in the take-up of oxytocin and the amount of oxytocin made between the family.
I vaguely remember like an Attenborough documentary talking about this, and they were like they're like the screaming desert moles, aren't they? Or the screaming desert voles.
I don't know the actual name of them because it was like 10, 15 years ago that I sort of found out about this. Quite a long time ago. And anyway, just to say that I found that quite interesting. I want to welcome Hillary's as well. And welcome.
It's really interesting, this stuff, because it's things that you don't consciously think affect you, and it is affecting you. You know, Christopher Mowdy has a story on his channel, and he has this kind of cute, speech about, the study of scent. And in the end, he says something really sweet to Shanna. But what was interesting with that is, I guess when they were dating and they were separated, like from distance, he said, I want a T-shirt that you wore, or a pillowcase or something. And isn't that interesting? It's something that I don't think about, but
that's hilarious.
It is interesting, right? It has an effect.
My son had to sleep with one of my old worn out T-shirts.
Oh.
And he would walk around, I can't find my tea. I need my tea. Yeah, for years there. Yeah, and when it finally just disintegrated, right? I had to search and find another one that was equally worn out, because he had to have that, and it must have been something to do with my scent so ingrained in it from wearing it so many years that it was even wore out, that he'd cuddle right up and go to sleep with it.
Wow.
I don't know if Simos knows this, but I actually have a sleeve of a shirt that he cut up while I was over there. And I kept it in a Ziploc bag, but it doesn't smell like him anymore. It's been too long.
Wow, I'm surprised it doesn't smell like me. I'm a smelly bastard. Anyway.
Lost its smell.
Yeah, you Brits have a very distinct smell.
Yeah, that's right.
I had to burn all my clothes.
They were so bad. Yeah, I have to now as well. If I like if any woman comes into my house, they immediately go, "Oh my God, what's that smell?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that so?
Yeah, well, no, it's
okay.
not so really. There's no women that come in my house. Anyway, there we go. So, evolution, Hillary's. Smell and evolution. What's the link? Tell me all.
Well, the olfactory sense is connected to around your limbic system, so it's the most directly related to emotion and memory.
Yes. You may be repeating some of what happened early in the hangout.
Probably.
Just to point that out. What was your thing? Do you think did that lead to consciousness?
Do I think what?
Is that like a first step on the road to consciousness, do you think?
I don't know if you guys have defined consciousness yet, but yeah, I'd say that's
really.
Okay. But yeah, I'd say that's one of the first steps of the
good,
like the interface.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate that. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's up next with smell. Have we got anything else to talk about smell with? Food, right? Disgust, morals.
I kind of wanted to talk about that Scottish lady who can smell Parkinson's, but
yeah, that's really fucking strange. That is just the strangest thing ever.
I don't know if anybody else is interested in that, or if it's just.
Can we evolve to suddenly smell Parkinson's? Like.
Well, apparently, like this lady, so she was always a super sniffer. She has like there's two genes that are responsible. That it's like not like the medical term, but there is a medical term for it, and we're called super sniffers. But there's like two genes, and if you have like both of them, like you're called a super sniffer. If you don't have either of them, like you can still like obviously smell, but you won't be able to like smell as strongly as other people. But she, like, from a young age, it was like pretty apparent that she could smell like better than most people around her. As a young wife, she like noticed that her husband was like kind of musty. And she's like, dude, like you're kind of musty, like you need to take a shower.
Musty, ew. Ew.
And even after like washing his clothes and him taking a shower, like the smell just kept coming back. And like after a while, she was just like, okay, like I love my husband. He smells messy. I guess that's just his smell. Like whatever. I'm just gonna have to deal with it. And then I think it was like almost 20 years later, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and she like went into like a support group that was like a support group for like Parkinson's and like their people who were partners of their, so it was like half the people in this room had Parkinson's, and she was like, ooh, that's the smell. Like that this room was just like rank with it, right? And she went to this conference after that, and they were talking about how like there's no early detection like means for Parkinson's, and it was like, there's all these things that we could do if we had a way of early detection. And she like raised her hand and she was like, what about like the smell? And they were like, what are you talking about? And she was like, the smell, because like Parkinson's people have a smell. And like the guy got in touch with her afterwards, and they like did this study, or it was an experiment where they took people who had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and they put like their t-shirts. It was like they had like all these people like wear a plain white t-shirt for 24 hours. And then she was supposed to like smell these t-shirts and like, decide which ones had Parkinson's and which ones didn't. She got all of them right except for one. And it was like, it wasn't a huge study. And the guy who conducted it was like, well, like she's maybe on to something, but it's not really, concrete enough that I can like really, put money into this, that I can get funding for, studying this further. And months and months later, and I think it was like over a year later, weird chance encounter, he happens to be golfing and runs into like on the golfing green one of the guys who was a participant in that study. And he was like, oh, hey, like weird happenstance. Oh, like, by the way, I happen to have gotten diagnosed with Parkinson's. And the dude was like, wait, what? And he like went back and looked through his notes, and it turned out that was the one t-shirt that she had identified as having Parkinson's that they were like, no, it was a false positive. Like she was able to detect it before he was diagnosed. Oh, so wow. They ended up like working with this one, and it was actually even like, I think it was just last year that they were able to like, it was one of the things that I felt like was one of the good uses of AI, because they worked with this woman, and they were able to like train like scent dogs basically, to like now scent dogs are able to detect Parkinson's.
Yeah, that's been confirmed. That basically, Parkinson's changes a little bit of biochemistry, so that you end up with these oils on your skin, and then they can actually smell it, which is kind of cool. So
they were able to
like, get the fuck out of my brain, Mike. I was just about to say there's got to be something different in the biochemistry of people, because I don't understand, unless you want to invoke like magic-y stuff, how somebody could have a distinct smell associated with something like that, but there be no difference in the biochemistry of that human, such that there's a chemical or a suite of chemicals or what have you that gives off that are the source of that different smell. It just fascinates me.
It's wild.
Okay, well, let's go to the next bit of topic here, Mike. This is kind of aimed at you here,
Mike.
Mike. Let's blow some more brains, I guess. So yeah, like the idea that smell is informative of our morality, right? So it's there you go.
The smell of liquor.
Yeah. So you know where I'm going to go with this, Mike, or do you want me to carry on?
Okay, well, it's the 1920s, so I suppose a repeat of prohibition is in order.
Go further.
Also, sex has a smell. You can smell somebody after they have sex and know, like, oh, you just got laid. Sometimes you can smell that.
Yes.
Yeah. If my name isn't Funk, if that isn't true. Anyway,
that is why we shower, boys and girls.
So the idea here is that we smell things first to tell whether the food in particular, right? We smell food to see what condition it's in and whether it's safe to eat or not. And that's much more reliable than the look of it or the taste of it. right? So the smell thing is what informs our taste, in fact, right, of food, because we want to eat something which is good. But the feeling that we get when we smell food which is off is one of disgust, right? And that potentially is the same part of the brain that
Moral.
lights up when we feel either unfairly done to or wrong, or
Yep.
something is triggering
Well-
our moral responses.
But funny
Yeah.
enough, that's the emotion that leads to othering and killing people too. By the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends. I think it is contextual too. The same molecule that when you have dirty socks, right? I mean, the same molecule that you smell
Mm.
is the same molecule that some cheese have.
Yeah.
So I think it's, but I mean, you wouldn't
But
grade.
no, there's a difference. There's a difference, Fabio, because smelling bad socks, right, is not the same thing as disgust when it comes to smelling off meat, right? There's
No,
a
but
certain
it-
there's a
Well, it's
certain
because
guttural, hang on.
you
There's a certain
never smelled
guttural.
by
There's a
socks.
certain. There's
Wait.
a certain guttural. Yeah, that's true. There's a certain guttural response that we get in the brain of absolute disgust, right? It's a guttural response, and that
Right, like it'll make
is
you sick.
is a sense.
Yeah.
That's an area of the brain, and this is the connection. It's not that smell tells you what your morals are or anything like that. It's that the same area of the brain is the one that lights up when we're making moral decisions.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I wasn't going to the morals part. I was just saying that
okay.
that smells that give you a negative reaction, they're also really contextual. So it's not. I mean, it's really hard
I
to.
don't think that's necessarily true in terms of what I'm trying to talk about, which
Well, I
is
mean, there are
bad meat,
smells,
right?
there are
Which is bad
smells
meat.
which
That's
some
not
people
contextual. If
like.
the meat is bad, then we tend, like pretty much
Discard it.
99% of humans are going to have a reaction to it of disgust,
But again,
This-
the,
right,
right?
yeah,
Because it's an
to
evolutionary
go
thing, right?
back
That's
to what I
not
was saying earlier.
contextual in terms of, oh, some people think this smell of bad meat is a really nice smell,
Well,
and they
listen,
like to eat bad meat.
okay, but going back to what I was saying earlier,
a dry aged steak doesn't really smell like fresh meat. But in that instance, in that context, you say, okay, that smells kind of bad. I know it's going to be good, and you're going to cook it anyway.
Yeah.
So
it's one of the
sorry, I
reasons
missed what
why
you're
they
saying.
hang meats.
but as far as like it's a rotten meat smell, when you have that like sense of like disgust and that like gagging sense, again, that's a trigeminal response. That's not an
Yes.
olfactory response.
Okay, so yeah, that is true. What I'm saying, it's also contextual. It's the same thing. Again, let's take the example of the meat. If you buy some dry aged meat, it doesn't smell good at all, right? But that is the smell that it's supposed to have in order to be good.
Yeah. Some
Right.
jerkies are a very good example of it.
Yeah. So I mean, I understand what you say, Simons, but I'm just saying that I don't see that super automatic to
Yeah.
to be super. I mean,
I mean,
it also
moving it-
Well, again, I think
Moving
the
it on to
point
cheese,
is
I mean,
the
there's-
feeling.
There are
that feeling
there are
feel-
cheeses that some people absolutely, they drool over them,
That's
but
true.
it make the smell of the same cheese will make other people gag.
Oh, they smell like death. I can guarantee you.
Yeah.
they smell like literal death.
Yeah, some cheeses do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that area of the brain which is lighting up, okay, whether it tells you that it's bad or good, that kind of, like, some people are sociopaths, right? So yeah, fair enough. Okay, yeah, this isn't a kind of a one-for-one response. So
Yeah.
no, I'm not really talking about those instances where we train ourselves not to gag, right? Which is certainly possible to do. But I'm talking about, like, when we have this natural reaction to bad meat, what stops us eating bad meat, right? And in evolutionary history particularly, right, was the smell of meat. It wasn't just the look of it, and it wasn't the taste of it, it was the smell of it specifically.
Right. It's
that
rancid.
actually
You can't
gave
eat
us
it.
this warning sign that we shouldn't be
agreed,
eating raw
agreed.
meat like that smells like that. Right now,
Right.
the point being
But then-
is that's hang on. The point being is that particular signal that goes to the brain that says, no, you don't want to do that, is the smell of meat. Wasn't just the look of it, and it wasn't the taste of it, it was the smell of it specifically.
Right.
That actually gave us this warning sign that we shouldn't be eating raw meat like that smells like that. Right now, the point being is that particular signal that goes to the brain that says, no, you don't want to do that, Okay, that's the area of the brain that we use when we're deciding or when we're feeling that we shouldn't be doing particular acts like stealing or whatever else. The
Right,
physiological brain response that we
but
get
isn't it
from
interesting
morality.
too? What
Mhm.
we do is like we go, oh, that meat's rancid. It's disgusting. You're like, and you throw it away. And that same feeling of disgust, which is interesting when you're talking about morality, you can have disgust over somebody's behavior, and then the next step that goes too far is the dehumanization, right? So like that's why
Exactly.
propaganda is so powerful, and
I
it's
saw
very
this.
fascinating.
I saw this just a few days ago on Twitter when Zohran Mamdani, who won the primary for mayor of New York City, was someplace and he was eating food with his hands, something that Americans do all the fucking time
with pizza and shit, right?
And and one of a Republican congressman was literally like, "The visceral disgust I say when this man like it's just racism. That like it's literally the same part of the brain that gets activated in racist people when they see the people they don't like." Like when somebody who hates black people sees a black person literally just walking down the street and it's just like, whoop whoop, I'm gonna pull this person over and hope I get to shoot him. Like it's the same. It's the same part of
That
the brain.
sounds more like outrage to me.
Yeah, when they've done the MRI test, it shows it's actually people on the left who have that stronger disgust response.
That's not true. It's actually the right. I don't know. I would take that a look. Maybe it depends on what they're disgusted about.
Yeah, or unless I'm totally misremembering it, but I remember seeing that thing about the functional MRI.
Yeah, it's conservatives. It's conservatives that have the higher disgust. Listen to the rhetoric.
I don't know
usually.
that we really need to start sort of trying to make those sort of pigeonholes, because at the end of the day, regardless of your politics, you've got just as much potential to be fucked up in the head as anybody else.
Oh, definitely.
And othering other people.
So,
yeah.
Also, like my understanding is that like as far as those like levels of disgust and stuff, it like really depends on contextually like what it is that they're like showing them pictures of and stuff like that.
That's true.
I don't
I don't
think
know
that
if
they
anybody's
found
brought
any
it
like
up, but-
real definitive. I think as far as like conservatives, yeah.
I don't know if anybody's brought it up, but they've done dating programs too, where they have people do kind of like we talked about the Parkinson's thing, where they have this unwashed, unworn T-shirt that they're supposed to
Oh,
wear.
good. I thought you were going to say something else.
No.
Yeah.
It's a T-shirt. And then like they wear it. They take this like scentless shower before bed, and then they put the T-shirt on, and then they take it off in the morning and put it in this Ziploc bag, and then like a couple days later they bring it to this thing, and then it just has numbers on it, and you're supposed to smell each one. They said that it's based on certain hormones that your body gives off, and that if the smell is particularly attractive to you, it's ones that your like immune system finds compatible with yours, like if you were to have a child with that person. And then if there's a chance of some like recessive trait problem, the person doesn't smell so attractive to you. And they had one episode of CSI where they did the same thing in Las Vegas. Some type of like speed dating type situation.
That's interesting. Like I don't really consciously think of smell too much until like something really hits me. Like I know that like this is weird. A lot of times if I smell meat, I'll start drooling kind of thing. But there basil does that for me. If I smell basil, I have an instant kind of salivating thing. But it is fascinating because it's such an autopilot thing. It's so interesting.
It wouldn't be appropriate for me to name what makes me salivate when I smell it.
It's totally natural. That's fine.
Now that I've lost my sense of smell.
It's very fucking natural. Yes, it is.
What is that?
Basil.
Oh, nice.
Basil. Yep. Yum.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
Now that I've lost my sense of smell, I no longer have a moral compass.
But the thing is, smell is used sort of. How do I want to word this? In discussions of morality, smell can be used as like a justification. You might hear certain people talk about how like certain people are gross and disgusting and they smell bad and that's why they're bad and they shouldn't be allowed in the country and things like that. So smell can play a part in how people are treated in society or how groups of people are broadly perceived.
Like the smelly Walmart voters.
Yeah, exactly. You walk into Walmart and you're just like, ah.
There is actually a Walmart in San Diego that smells so disgusting that I want to vomit when I go in it. I'm like, why did we come here? Yeah, it's so bad. It smells like poo to me.
Only been in Walmart one time, and it was because I had to do a blood draw, and they had the blood draw kiosk thing inside Walmart. That's the only time I've stepped foot inside.
Telling me you've only been in a Walmart literally one singular time in
One
your
time.
entire fucking life.
One time.
How do you know
And it was
3 months
to
old,
do
your
a
mom-
blood draw for the doctor. Yeah, that was it.
Walmart is my
how do you know
second
you weren't,
home.
like 3 months old and your mom took you to you went with her to Walmart or something. How do you know that?
Oh, we grew up with Kmart.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
And
Ride the
Pomida.
rides out front. Oh, that was great. Yeah.
Oh, I love
Anybody
Kmart.
remember Pomida?
Yep.
No.
Yeah, it was before Kmart.
Good old Pomida.
Yeah, we were the
I once
Kmart
got
generation.
busted at Pomida.
That's right. But
Kmart had everything. They had you need a new bicycle, you went to Kmart. You needed school clothes, you went to Kmart.
you wanted a BB gun, you go to Kmart. If you wanted WrestleMania guys, like the boys always wanted the wrestler guys,
Oh,
they were at Walmart.
Fishing and
Or not Walmart,
hunting.
Kmart.
Yep, fishing and hunting. They had all the stuff. They had the licenses there. They had all the the rods and reels and the rifles and the outfits. Yeah, Kmart had everything. It was great.
I have a quick
Wasn't the
question.
best quality, but it was great.
I have a quick question. Do we have any linguists here on the panel?
I can speak a few. Why?
Okay. There's an interesting question that's come up that's arisen in the chat room. Somebody was saying that they weren't alive in 1962, so they must have been dead. Now, I'm suggesting that in order to be dead,
I'm not
there's
sure
a
he's alive now.
prerequisite- There's a prerequisite
Yeah.
to have first been alive.
Yes.
Agreed.
So, how
None.
would you describe the state of being pre?
Exactly that. Pre-alive.
So
Not
pre-alive. I was thinking inconceived.
Inconceived.
I
Yeah,
always
that's
say-
a good one.
Yeah. Preconceived. That
No,
would be good.
no, right. Okay, we're missing it, Brian. It's inconceivable.
Well, no,
Particularly
it
like-
can't
I
be
was thinking
inconceivable. It can't be inconceivable because they're here, so they were conceived.
Because
So it can't
something
be
that's
I always read-
preconceived is
it was
designed.
Right.
So it can't be preconceived.
How
It's
about
got to be
non-existent?
No,
How about
no, it would.
non-existent?
It would be
But-
preconceived because your mother's ovum was already there, like when she was born.
Yeah, preconceived. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I mean,
good
not
point.
inconceivable.
Good point.
Simon,
always refer to-
Inconceivable was a joke. It's a
Non-existent, no.
reference.
So there we go.
People-
You've
I
got
always-
either inconceivable or preconceived. There you go.
nobody's non-existent because there are points in space-time where you exist, even if you're not experiencing that existence. Those points in
That's
space-time
true.
exist.
That is
Like
true.
2033 exists. We're just not there to be experiencing it. Much like, I don't know, Mumbai exists, but I presume none of us are in Mumbai to be experiencing what's happening in Mumbai. But
Is
it
that-
doesn't mean Mumbai doesn't exist. It just means it does and we're not there.
Is that the same theory where time exists all at once?
Yeah, B theory.
No,
It's-
it's the
it's an
theory that,
offshoot of
that
it.
all moments of time are equally real.
Okay.
Basically,
I mean,
it's
smell.
basically it's the theory that that works on the speed of light, and everywhere is somewhere now from somebody's perspective.
Hello.
So if
Okay,
you
well,
were
to be
say
honest,
3 light years away,
Brian?
Now would be
Brian?
3 years ago for us.
Yeah. So to be honest, this sounds like a topic for another State of the Onion. So I'm just going to say one thing. Lucky, if I couldn't smell you in 1962, you just had no relevance to me. That's all I'm going to say. And yeah, I don't know what the theory of smell is exactly, but whatever it is, I mean, just one question we'll finish with. Go around the panel to get everybody's finish up on it. What is the speed of smell? What is the speed of smell?
The speed of smell. It depends on wind speed, atmospheric pressure, density, what material composition, all that stuff. Like, you know, you've probably heard that sharks can smell blood from it's like a mile away or something like that. And people seem to think that, like, if you put your hand underwater and cut it, the minute the blood comes out, a shark a mile away could smell it. No, stop. No. Bad. That's wrong.
Okay.
Give the blood enough time to travel a mile, and despite its dissolution in the water, a shark could still detect it.
Yeah,
but it's not like you cut yourself and immediately a shark a mile away.
It still relies on the current, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Also the wind direction as well, presumably.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to go over to Hillary's first. Is there anything you want to say on the topic of did consciousness emerge as a kind of centered awareness, or anything else you'd like to add in?
No, I think that it does make sense that as part of the like human operating device that is like the one of the proto-conscious senses. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Headless, over to you.
The speed of smell is 10 feet per second.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm glad we clarified exactly.
Or 6.8 miles an hour.
Is that really it? In Earth's atmosphere or
Did
something?
you just look that up?
Sounds like you did,
You're very confident about that.
It depends on whether pineapple goes on pizza or not. That's my attitude. Okay, so over to you, Ella.
Objectively, it does. Yes.
Elle, over to you.
Oh, me?
Yes,
I would. Gosh, there's a bunch of stuff that I kind of wanted to talk about that we never got to, but
well, bring it up now, and maybe we'll do it in the next one.
So we know that loss of smell is linked to cognitive decline, but we don't actually have any standardized tests for like testing people's like level of smell, which I think is interesting. 0.5% of people are thought to be born without a sense of smell when I looked it up, but on average, those people were diagnosed around the age of 14, even though it was considered like a congenital case, which like I am interested in knowing more about as to like how it can be a congenital case if it's diagnosed at age 14. I also would like to know more about like the science of smelling salts and things like the like click friendships where like you know immediately like when you meet somebody that like you're going to get along with them. And there was a study that a woman did a while back where she like did a bunch of like asked a bunch of people questions who were like basically like friends who would become like really fast friends upon like first meeting. And I thought that that was really interesting. But yeah, again, we don't have time for any of that. Just some interesting.
Yeah, we kind of covered some of it. Yeah, we did cover a little bit of that. I do remember there was a program that had 100 guys that were told to again wear a T-shirt for a night. Then their T-shirts were vacuum bagged. And one woman came out and had to sniff each T-shirt until she found the one she liked the most, or that she wanted. And then the guy, like the guy stood up, and they went out and got married like a year later.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Have had a 20-year relationship ever since, or whatever it was at the time. You know.
Yeah.
And I thought,
All this
well,
time we've
there you
been
go.
doing it wrong.
Just on sweat smells, really. But there you go. Fresh sweat smells. We're not talking about stale ones. Anyway, over to you, Speckle.
I think you were asking about the speed of smell.
That was my question, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that I don't know the exact like speed of smell per se, but I would say that you smell before you cognitively realize you smell, and you feel something about that smell before you rationalize the smell.
Agreed. Yes, that's a good point. Actually, there is a sense that the sense of smell gets to the brain so quickly that we have to then realize what we smell and rationalize it before it gets into conscious mind. Yeah, I think that's very true as well. Hence, we have things like love at first sight. I think it should be love at first smell, really.
Maybe.
There you go.
I agree.
What if it happens over the internet?
Say again?
What if it happens over the internet?
Yeah, it can happen over the internet. There's no reason why you can't. Some people are heavily attracted to intelligence, aren't they? So that can easily be demonstrated just in conversation. Hey, yeah. So anyway, over to you, Leo, then. Anything you want to wrap up with on the subject, or something you want to share?
Yeah, I was upstairs getting another Freezy Pop.
Nice.
I heard somebody mention something about.
Did you bring enough for everybody, Leo?
I did not. Sorry. I guess you get out of luck today. About smelling salts. You don't need smelling salts. Just come to Iowa. We'll let you fill some anhydrous tanks, and let me tell you, when that shit hits your fucking face. Oh, good morning. Hello. How are you?
Yeah. I always think of Hello Vietnam when I think of smelling salts.
That's what's in smelling salts, I believe. It's like ammonia and other stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure it's ammonia and shit, yeah.
Yeah, and that obviously anhydrous ammonia. That like I'm telling you, that shit that'll knock
Gets you straight real quick, don't it?
Yeah.
As I say, I love that the phrase. I think it's I love the smell of napalm in the morning from.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Over to you, Dave, Captain Dave. Thank you for coming on once again. I'm looking forward to seeing you Saturday.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Simos. And I would say that senses, including smell, shape our world, and that has to kind of do with consciousness, right? It's how we shape the world and see the world and everything. So I would say yes, that it's the data we needed to form our image of the world, and then the simple consciousness in some species to the more complex in ours.
Okay, thank you so much. Obviously, Dave's link is in the chat as well as Mike's, which we're going to get to in a second.
And next time you hear from me, I should be in Kentucky. So look for all that. There should be a lot of folks from a lot of channels putting stuff on YouTube this weekend from the ARC protest.
Nice.
Over to you, Fabio.
Well, I mean, I was planning to go and saying that there was some smells that not everybody can catch, and to me, for example, was really fascinating the fact that I discovered that I could smell if a woman was ovulating, was in the fertile period, and I actually. Yeah.
Smells good, doesn't it?
Because you suddenly get randy. That's why.
Yeah, listen, I can only say it's useful, right? I mean, for all obvious reasons.
Yeah, you get a whiff of that.
But I would say, I mean, I just want to touch on something that I don't think we talked about. That, I mean, I'm not really sure it's consciousness, but I think that one of the things that makes us more conscious of other people and other realities and other things around us is when we actually overcome the sense of smell. Usually strangers smell different, and things that we're not used to, they smell different, and
they stand out.
And the first reaction is, okay, that smells different from me. It's not a good person, or it's not somebody or something that I want to deal with it. I think that what we should try to do is to actually overcome those senses, and try to look a little bit deeper in what's actually happening around us, and not relying too much on senses that have been with us since the beginning of time.
Interesting, actually. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that kind of ties in with the morality thing a little bit as well.
See.
Yeah. So I appreciate that, because I've been trying to talk about this topic for 3 of these goddamn State of the Onions, and not once have I managed to actually get through it. But anyway, there we go. over to
There
you,
you go.
Mike. Please give us your opinions and what you think, and anything you wanted to say in general. I'd love to hear you pontificate on this subject for a little while.
Who was that for?
To you, Mike.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I missed that. Anyway, it's complicated. So, basic emotions. Well, first of all, smell is like chemoreceptors, right? Which existed in very, very early single-celled animals and bacteria even, right? So it's very basic. But when you understand that smell, just like hunger and anger and all these endocrine emotions that you feel, they all bypass the thalamus. They go directly into like the amygdala and the limbic system. And the limbic system lights up huge areas of your cortex like a lawn sprinkler. So when you smell something like a rose, the reason that you have all these memories is because it distributes to your entire cortex, basically, this lawn sprinkler system. So if you think of smell like an emotion, and then what you mentioned earlier, Simos, about 10 minutes ago, is that there are, things detecting bad meat and things like that, that are probably separate pathways that you have genetics for, that wires you up to have this horrible distaste for rotten meat or something like that. So it's all very complicated, but the interesting thing is that smell is very different than your other senses. It's more like an emotion than anything else. And that makes a lot of sense when you look at the anecdotes. So, and there's so much more, but that's all I got.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And over to you, Brian.
As far as what is the speed of smell? I'd say the time it takes for you to open a bottle of strong aromatherapy and for somebody to notice. Other than that, I'd say what Mike said. And I would propose an amendment to Fabio's law, or rather a subclause. Everybody stinks.
Oh, thank you. Everybody's a smelly.
Yeah,
I like that.
everybody's smelly.
I like that indeed.
True.
I like that indeed. Okay,
Everybody smells.
Thank you so much. Anybody want to just add anything on the flip side that they didn't say? No? Okay, that's great. Okay, go ahead, Al.
I was just going to say, I think it's funny that you chose this topic like 2 weeks after I decided to use aromatherapy to try and quit vaping. So,
okay, I had no idea.
Sorry.
I didn't think you did.
I guess you didn't tell me for a reason.
And if
we won't go into that.
If you speak with Christopher, he would tell you it's bullshit. So there's that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably.
That's why we don't talk to Christopher anymore.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. Christopher, please, will you come
he also
hang out?
smells funny. And
Yeah,
he
will
also
you
smells
please-
funny.
He
that's
does. Yes, he does smell
Yeah.
funny.
Oh, yeah,
I've
yeah,
always
yeah.
enjoyed. I always laugh when I smell Christopher.
Yeah.
That's just how that is.
I wish I hadn't said that now.
Oh, well, there we go. Also, as for the speed of sound, I think it's
Speed
an
of
invisible.
smell, Simon.
It's an invisible. Sorry, speed of smell. It's an invisible quantity. The only thing I'm sure of is he who smelts it, dealt it. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.